Small towns are meant to feel safe, the kind of places where you leave your doors unlocked and everyone knows your name. Barron, Wisconsin was one of those towns. A population of just over 3,000, quiet streets, friendly faces, and a close-knit community. But safety is an illusion, and on October 15, 2018, that illusion shattered. When Jake Thomas Patterson rolled into the Closs family's driveway just before 1 a.m. on October 15, 2018, he knew he wouldn't be leaving alone. About 2 weeks earlier, he was waiting behind a school bus on his way to work when he spotted 13-year-old Jayme Closs climbing on board. Jake Patterson's life was defined by failures and mediocrity. A high school graduate with no ambition, he bounced between menial jobs in the rural outskirts of Wisconsin. Briefly, he had enlisted in the Marines, only to drop out after a month. Living with his father in a rundown cabin in Gordon, Wisconsin, Jake led a life devoid of direction or purpose. Then one day, driving along a quiet rural route, he spotted her, Jayme Closs. She was stepping off her school bus, her auburn hair catching the sunlight. In that fleeting moment, something in Jake snapped. She became his obsession, an object of fixation he believed he was destined to possess. He didn't know her name, where she lived, or anything about her, but none of that mattered. In his mind he had already decided. Jayme was his, and he would do whatever it took to claim her. Patterson began researching. He followed the school bus route, piecing together clues until he pinpointed her house. He scouted the property at night, observing the layout, noting the positions of doors and windows. He even considered the neighbors, how far away they were, how likely they'd be to notice anything. Jake rehearsed every detail. He shaved his head and face to avoid leaving DNA. He wiped down his red Ford Taurus to ensure it was spotless. He bought gloves, a black ski mask, and a 12-gauge shotgun, choosing the weapon specifically for its ability to kill with a single shot. He practiced breaking down doors, planning for every possible scenario. Weeks passed as he built his plan, but Jake's twisted determination was unwavering. The night of October 15th would be the culmination of his obsession. It was past midnight when Jake Patterson crept onto the Closs family's property. The house was dark, silent, as its occupants slept. Jake parked at the end of the driveway and cut the headlights. In the crisp autumn air, he approached the house with the shotgun in hand, each step deliberate, each breath steady. Reaching the front door, he knocked, a sharp, deliberate sound that echoed through the quiet night. Inside, Jayme Closs stirred awake. Confused, he checked the time, 12:53 a.m. Frowning, he pulled himself out of bed and padded toward the door. "Who's there?" he called out. No answer. Jayme peered through the small window next to the door. Outside, the shadowy figure of a man loomed, his face hidden by a black ski mask. Unease prickled at the back of James's neck, but before he could act, Jake raised the shotgun. The blast shattered the silence, sending shockwaves through the house. Jayme crumpled to the floor, lifeless. Upstairs, Denise and Jayme woke with a start. The sound of the gunshot reverberated through the walls. Denise grabbed her daughter's hand, her heart pounding. Without a word, she led Jayme into the bathroom and locked the door. Denise tried to call 911, but she wasn't able to say a word to the dispatcher before Patterson entered. He forced Denise to put tape on Jayme's mouth, and then shot the woman right in front of her young daughter. Jayme, frozen in terror, stared at her mother's body. She barely registered Jake grabbing her, binding her wrists and ankles with the duct tape. He wrapped tape around her mouth, silencing her sobs. Dragging her down the stairs, Jake moved with chilling efficiency. Outside, the cold night air bit at Jayme's skin as he shoved her into the trunk of his car. The lid slammed shut, plunging her into darkness. The drive to Jake's cabin in Gordon, Wisconsin was over an hour long. Trapped in the trunk, Jayme lay motionless, her body trembling. Each bump in the road jostled her, but her fear was so consuming she barely noticed the discomfort. When they arrived, Jake hauled her out of the trunk and into the cabin. The property was isolated, surrounded by dense woods. There would be no neighbors to hear her screams. Inside, the cabin was bare, almost Spartan. Jake wasted no time. He forced Jayme into a small corner of the room and slid a bed over her, creating a makeshift cage. To ensure she couldn't escape, he placed heavy objects around the bed, weights, laundry bins, anything that would trap her. "Stay quiet," he warned, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. "If you move, bad things will happen." For 88 days, Jayme endured unimaginable fear and isolation. Jake controlled every aspect of her life. He fed her sparingly, often withholding food as a form of punishment. When he wasn't in the cabin, he forced her to remain under the bed, sometimes for hours at a time. Jake's mood swung unpredictably. Sometimes he was calm, almost conversational. Other times he erupted in fits of rage, yelling at Jayme or slamming objects. The psychological torment was relentless. Despite everything, Jayme refused to give up. Jayme quickly learned he would get angry over small things and cooperated with him so he wouldn't harm her. Despite meticulously planning his abduction of Jayme, going as far as shaving his head to prevent leaving his DNA behind, Patterson reportedly didn't think about what he would do once he had Jayme. When Patterson's father or friends came to his house, he forced her to hide beneath his twin-sized bed, barricading the openings with storage totes weighed down by barbells so she couldn't push her way out. He also made her stay under the bed when he left the house, sometimes leaving her without food, water, or access to a bathroom for 12 hours at a time. As time went on, however, Patterson began to trust Jayme. They watched television, played board games, and cooked together, and he even took her on walks through his property. For 88 days, the small space under Jake Patterson's bed had been her prison. During those long, agonizing days, she barely moved, trapped not only by the makeshift barricades of weights and bins that surrounded her, but also by the fear of Patterson's wrath. He had made it clear, any attempt to escape would be met with violence, perhaps even death. But even in the face of that fear, Jayme's determination burned quietly within her. She observed Patterson carefully, noting his patterns and behaviors. She noticed that he was meticulous but not infallible. He often left her alone when he ran errands or visited his family. Jayme knew that any mistake he made, no matter how small, could be her opportunity to escape. As the days turned into weeks, Jayme began mentally preparing herself. She thought about her parents, the horrific night of their murder, and the promises she made to herself in the dark hours under the bed. She had to survive. Not just for herself, but for them. She refused to let Jake Patterson take everything from her. That moment came on January 10, 2019. Jake had left the cabin, believing Jayme was secure under the bed. But he had underestimated her resilience. Summoning every ounce of courage, she pushed aside the barriers trapping her and ran. The icy Wisconsin winter cut into her bare feet as she navigated the snow-covered woods. Desperation drove her forward. After several minutes, she spotted Jean Nutter, a woman walking her dog. Jane immediately recognized Jayme. "Jean Nutter, oh my God, you're Jayme Closs." Jayme nodded, tears streaming down her face. Jean led her to a nearby house where they called 911. Police arrived within minutes. Jayme was taken to safety, her nightmare finally over. Jake Patterson was arrested the same day. In custody, he confessed to everything, showing no remorse. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Let me know, what do you think of this case and what you would like to see next? Till next time.